My mom spent Thanksgiving dinner proving I wasn't really ill. She spent that night explaining to paramedics why I collapsed on her floor. The moment I walked into my parents' house for Thanksgiving, my mom looked me up and down and said, "You look healthy enough to actually help this year, so no excuses." I have a chronic fatigue condition that makes my body shut down when I push too hard, and I had nearly passed out twice just walking from my car to the front door. But my mom was already pointing toward the basement and saying, "Start hauling chairs. We need 12." My aunt looked up from the couch and her eyes narrowed as she watched my mother practically shove me downstairs. I carried the folding chairs up 2 at a time, and my arms were shaking by the 4th trip. And when I asked if I could rest, she looked at my dad and said, "Some people would rather complain than contribute," loud enough for the whole house to hear. The other guests started arriving, and my mom put me on coat duty and appetizer duty, while she stayed in the kitchen looking important. My aunt caught my arm as I passed and scanned my face the way she does with patients at the hospital. But my mom called me over to move the heavy oak dining table before she could say anything. I grabbed one end and my cousin grabbed the other, but my arms gave out halfway through and I dropped my side with a bang that made everyone turn and stare. "I guess we know who's been skipping the gym," my mom announced, and a few relatives chuckled nervously. Before I could recover, she shoved a stack of ceramic plates into my hands and said, "Set the table for 20 and try not to drop these too." My hands were shaking so badly the plates clattered against each other as I walked, and my grandmother asked if someone should help me, and my mom said, "She's fine, she just wants attention." I set the table and she pointed at the garage and said, "More chairs now." My legs almost buckled on the way to the garage and I had to stop and hold onto the door frame, and my uncle saw me and asked if I was okay, and my mom appeared behind him and said, "She does this every time there's work to be done." I dragged in the chairs one at a time because I couldn't lift them anymore, and she pointed at the chest freezer and said, "Ice, and hurry up." The bags were 20 pounds each, and I got the first one to the kitchen before my vision started going gray, and I had to grab the counter to keep from falling. My aunt started to get up, and my mom waved her off and said, "Trust me, if there was actually something wrong with her, she wouldn't be standing right now." My whole body was trembling, and the room kept tilting, and my mom looked at me still gripping the counter and hissed, "If you're going to fake being tired, do it somewhere the guests can't see you embarrassing me." Then she opened the oven and announced that the turkey was ready and looked directly at me. "You've barely lifted a finger today, so you can bring out the main course," she said. The turkey was enormous, easily 30 pounds, sitting in a roasting pan full of bubbling grease and hot drippings. "Mom, I can't carry that right now," I said, and she turned to the dining room full of relatives and said, "See what I've been dealing with all day?" 20 faces stared at me, and my grandmother shook her head. My mom turned back to me and said, "Pick it up or I'm taking you off my health insurance tomorrow." Without health insurance, my medication cost over $400 a month, so it was either move that turkey or be permanently bedbound. I wrapped my hands around the handles and lifted the roasting pan off the counter while heat seared through the thin oven mitts. The weight made my arms scream and my legs felt like wet sand. I took one step toward the dining room where 20 relatives sat watching, and my vision went white around the edges. I made it 3 more steps before my legs buckled and I crumpled to the hardwood floor with the roasting pan flying from my grip. The turkey hit the ground and slid across the floor while hot grease sprayed everywhere. It splattered across my arms and legs, and I screamed because it felt like lit matches pressed into my skin. I tried to get up, but my ankle had twisted under me and I collapsed back into the puddle of grease while people jumped from their chairs and shouted over each other. My mom stood frozen in the kitchen doorway with her mouth open. My aunt sprinted over and yelled for someone to call 911, then looked up at my mother and all the warmth drained from her face. My mother's face twisted and she shrieked, "You are ruining Thanksgiving over a little fall." My aunt stood slowly and said, "She could have died." So quietly it was somehow worse than if she had screamed it. "She could have died, and you would have blamed her for it." Nobody was looking at my mother anymore. The paramedics arrived and loaded me onto a stretcher, and the last thing I saw was my mother standing alone in her living room with grease soaking into her floors. My mom makes little Cornish game hens for Thanksgiving now instead of one big turkey.